Hello and welcome back to RPG PhD. I'm Dr. Ben, and today we're taking a trip outside the usual game design textbooks and into the world of psychology and learning theory. Role-playing games are, at their heart, social and cognitive experiences. We imagine, we improvise, and we immerse. So it's no surprise that insights from cognitive science and educational theory can give us new ways to think about how we design, run, and play tabletop role-playing games. In this episode, we're going to look at four powerful theories: flow theory, schema theory, cognitive load theory, and the zone of proximal development. Each offers a different lens on how players think, learn, and experience games, and each can inspire concrete design choices for mechanics, game mastering styles, and even session prep. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi introduced the concept of flow to describe the optimal experience of deep engagement where challenge and skill are perfectly balanced. Too easy and players fall into boredom. Too hard and they spiral into anxiety. The sweet spot between those extremes is where flow and fun emerges. In RPGs, flow is not just about winning or losing. It's about keeping the table collectively engaged in a story that feels challenging but achievable, tense but not paralyzing. RPGs are especially well suited to flow because they are adaptive systems. Unlike most board games or video games with rigid difficulty settings, a game master can adjust challenge and stakes on the fly. So for instance, combat balance. A group of level 5 characters facing a single goblin won't feel engaged. Facing a dragon without support might feel impossible. The right mix of enemies, terrain, and stakes keeps the fight tense but achievable. Pacing balance. Flow isn't just combat. Alternating tense dungeon crawls with lighthearted downtime maintains engagement. Too much relentless danger burns players out, while too much low-stakes chatter drifts towards boredom. For flow to emerge at the table, four elements are essential. Clear goals. Scenes should have explicit stakes. If you hold the bridge for 3 rounds, the villagers escape. Immediate feedback. Players need crisp resolution loops, roll, consequence, new choice, and visible trackables. Clocks, tokens, HP, or stress, for example. Balance difficulty. Encounters must stretch but not break. Social scenes should have real leverage and counters, not just auto wins. And concentrated attention. Minimize rules, dives, and spotlight drift. Keep everyone engaged through smooth spotlight rotation. Designers and game masters have a toolbox for shaping flow. So here's some dynamic difficulty tools. Things like encounter building systems, like Dungeons & Dragons 5e's challenge rating, are crude attempts to support flow. But more nuanced systems could measure not just combat strength, but narrative tension. Maybe something like a flow channel meter. Track table energy with a simple +1, -1 system. +1 when players lean in, -1 when they disengage. If -1 appears twice in 10 minutes, escalate stakes or cut to action. If +1 stacks, release tension with a small win, clue, or moment of relief. This could be something that's public or something that just happens behind the screen. Player-chosen risk. You can borrow from Blades in the Dark, let players opt into desperate positions for bigger payoffs. Voluntary risk is a flow engine. Difficulty dials. You can adjust terrain traits, enemy intent, time pressure, or resource scarcity. But you usually want to adjust one dial at a time so changes are legible. Tension budgets. Start each session with 3 to 5 stressors: time limit, moral dilemma, environmental hazard, elite foe, scarce ammo, that sort of thing. Spend them deliberately, not all at once. You can accelerate beats, you can minimize extras, montage your travel, you can escalate stakes, or offer a meaningful choice with visible consequences. Anxiety tells, things like analysis paralysis, players saying, "Nothing I do matters," or avoiding choices. And in order to fix this, you can clarify goals, shrink the decision space, 3 good options, and add cushions like partial successes, or fail forward type mechanics. If the party is breezing through combat, promote the lieutenant mid-fight with a new ability, a stretch within fiction. If you're struggling, convert two enemies into minions and explain it narratively. The mooks break ranks, preserving drama without fudging. Investigation. If players are stuck, provide gradient hints. First, a subtle nudge. The ledger margins look smudged. Then, a costed clue. Spend one intel to learn which entries were erased. And finally, a reveal tied to some sort of trade-off. So some of the pitfalls of this is overcorrecting mid-scene can feel like a rubber band game mastering. Players may notice the invisible hand. So we want to make sure that we keep adjustments in fiction. Reinforcements arrive, the crowd turns, a storm blows in, and beware of long look-up pauses. They puncture immersion and break flow more surely than a failed die roll. Now, some of the criticisms of flow is elegant as a model, but hard to operationalize in the unpredictable social space of role-playing games. What creates engagement for one player may bore or overwhelm another. A game master can tune difficulty, but not everyone's flow channel is aligned. The tactician, the storyteller, and the comedian may all want different things. Over-focusing on flow also risks over-soothing play, removing the awkward roleplay beats, dice randomness, and narrative friction that actually make role-playing games memorable. Flow is a powerful lens, but it should complement, not replace, the messy unpredictability of collaborative storytelling in role-playing games. Schema theory suggests that people bring mental frameworks, these schemas, into new experiences. These schemas guide how we interpret information and act. For example, you have a restaurant schema. You sit, you order, you eat, you pay. That helps you navigate dining without relearning each time. RPG players also carry schemas. The dungeon schema of entering, fighting monsters, finding treasures, and exiting. The social schema of taverns as quest hubs, or broader genre schemas, such as cyberpunk featuring megacorps and fantasy featuring elves, for example. Schemas are powerful because they reduce friction. When designers and game masters affirm schemas, players feel grounded and competent because they already know how to act. When schemas are broken or subverted, players experience surprise, tension, and maybe even curiosity. The art of design is to manage both, providing enough familiarity to anchor players, but enough subversion to keep them engaged. So reinforcing a schema, a dungeon crawl that plays exactly to type, monsters, traps, loot. Players feel mastery because they recognize the pattern. Subverting the schema, the dungeon is empty, silent, with no monsters. Instead, it's a puzzle about absence. Players' expectations are disrupted, sparking new tension. Some games explicitly build on schemas. Trophy Dark takes the dungeon crawl schema and twists it, making every delve doomed from the start. Apocalypse World encodes genre schemas into mechanics when you go aggro on someone, teaching players the assumptions of the world through play itself. Design moves with schema, affirm, twist, invert cadence, anchor by affirming familiar beats, the tavern rumor, the locked door. Then twist one, the locked door is a social lock requiring ritual etiquette. Finally, invert a keystone, the dragon negotiates, the treasure is a treaty. Signpost subversion, telegraph oddities early, incense in a ruined shrine, guards bowing to rats. Players love realizing that they guessed the twist. Surface player schemas, ask directly, what's one thing you expect in a haunted keep? Put one or two expectations on stage, then bend the rest. This makes subversion feel earned and not just arbitrary. You can also mechanize conventions. Powered by the apocalypse-style moves, encode schemas into rules. You can do the same in any genre. Write a list of convention moves, noir, superhero, gothic horror, that show players what stories they're playing. You can also use tools and mechanics that foreshadow. When a player states an expectation, the steward did it, you might award a token. They can spend it later to be right about a related clue. This rewards schema use without railroading. Expectation clocks, a visible 4 to 6 segment clock labeled guards get suspicious or heist heat. Players see how their conventional choices drive tension. Schema switch scenes. When the mode changes, so crawl, heist, courtroom, provide a one-line rule of thumb card for each mode. This lowers friction at schema boundaries. So at the table, an example, a dungeon subverted, the rooms and corridors are there, but as I said before, no monsters. The boss in this is a civic audit. The traps are policies. Players must navigate bureaucracy, not combat. Heist, affirmed then inverted. Start with blueprints, disguises, and guard patterns. Affirm. And then, midway, reveal the vault is a person, which is the twist. By the end, the client is actually the mark. So these expectations are inverted. Now, some pitfalls of this is gratuitous subversion can feel like a broken social contract. If everything is inverted, players lose trust in the fiction. Conversely, if everything is affirmed, play becomes rote. The key is rhythm. Anchor expectations, then bend them. Always foreshadow twists so mysteries remain fair. So some criticism of schema is while schema theory explains how players bring expectations into games, it has limits. Leaning on schemas too heavily risks collapsing into cliché if everything plays as expected. Over-subverting risks manipulation and leaving players feeling tricked. Moreover, not all players share the same schemas. One person's classic dungeon may be another's unfamiliar territory, shaped by cultural background or gaming history. Designers who assume a shared baseline of schemas risk alienating newcomers or unintentionally gatekeeping. Schema theory is best treated as a flexible design tool, not a universal law. Cognitive load theory argues that our working memory is limited. When too many demands pile up, performance drops. Effective instruction or game design manages load by minimizing unnecessary demands while scaffolding complexity. Good design lowers extraneous load, the UI friction, if you will, calibrates intrinsic load, the inherent complexity of the task, and cultivates germane load, the effort that actually builds skill and engagement. Consider a brand new player opening a Pathfinder 2e character sheet. The sheer number of feats, modifiers, and rules creates extraneous load that might overwhelm memory. Contrast that with Into the Odd, where a character fits on an index card. Far lower load, allowing new players to jump in quickly. Intrinsic load is the inherent complexity of the task, such as running combat with 6 different enemies. Extraneous load is needless overhead, like flipping through 3 books to find one condition. And germane load is effort that supports mastery, like navigating a tense negotiation scene that deepens roleplay skills. When load is balanced, play is engaging. When it's exceeded, players can shut down. So, diagnosing load at the table. Game masters can spot overload with a few simple proxies. Turn length creeping up. Frequent, wait, how does X work? Sorts of pauses. Book flipping spikes during play. Newcomers going silent while veterans coach every step. You can also run a quick load audit. Count concurrent elements in a scene. Things like conditions, zones, timers, enemy types, special rules. If there are more than 7, most groups will be past their comfort zone. So design patterns that reduce load. So let's look at progressive disclosure. Start with a core resolution loop. Gate advanced subsystems behind milestones. Don't drop the entire magic system on page 2. Resolution bias. Favor a single extensible resolution mechanic with tags or modifiers over bespoke subgames. Tags over exceptions. Fiery, loud, area, brutal communicates more quickly than nested exception text. Visual scaffolds, dual coding, clocks, tracks, status icons, and zone maps offload working memory. Chunking by role. Organize reference by action type, move, act, rather than rulebook categories. Also, don't forget about Game Master and product side aids, things like turn scaffolds, a 3-line turn checklist on table tents, state intent, choose action, resolve. Or maybe encounter cards, each foe summarized with bolded moves and triggers, so the game master doesn't have to fish through paragraphs mid-combat. Reference discipline, one-page rule summaries, one-page game master moves, and consistent iconography across books and sheets. Expertise reversal safety. Novices need examples and constraints. Experts usually need more freedom. So offer novice mode, pre-built options, and expert toggles, if you will, builds and synergies, so groups can scale complexity to taste. So some examples: in a crunchy system with lighter play, keep the core role structure intact, but move edge case rules into a rulings deck the game master draws from only when triggered. This lowers extraneous load without rewriting the system. Spellcasting UI. Present spells in a simple template, intent, cost, effect, risk supported with icons. This reduces lookup time and enables quick comparisons at the table. Now, some pitfalls are cutting too much in the name of lowering load can flatten meaningful choice. So protect germane complexity, the decisions that really define your game, while shaving down extraneous friction. Otherwise, you risk designing a system that is simple but shallow. Now let's look at some criticisms of this theory. While cognitive load theory highlights real cognitive limits, applying it too rigidly can oversimplify role-playing games. Many players actively enjoy grappling with dense rules and heavy character sheets. For them, crunch is the fun, not the problem. Thresholds also vary widely. What overwhelms one group might be perfect engagement for another. Critics argue that CLT-inspired design risks chasing accessibility at the expense of depth, flattening the texture of play into something too safe. In practice, designers must balance clarity with complexity, trimming friction without erasing the richness that makes role-playing game systems compelling. The zone of proximal development, introduced by Lev Vygotsky, describes the space between what a learner can do alone and what they can achieve with guidance. Growth happens in this sweet spot when support is offered, then gradually faded. In role-playing games, the game master and the system itself can function as scaffolds, creating conditions that stretch players just enough to keep them learning, experimenting, and engaging. The game master's role can be seen as scaffolding. Combat. Start new players with straightforward fights, then layer in terrain effects, spellcasters, and moral dilemmas. Roleplay. If a player is shy about dialogue, the game master can scaffold by asking leading questions or providing non-player character prompts until the player grows more confident. In terms of system mastery, introduce rules gradually, framing encounters that highlight one mechanic at a time rather than dumping all of them all at once. Model, imitate, fade, demonstrate a move, watch how the captain leverages a bond, invite the player to try with prompts, then remove the prompts next time. Think of it as like training wheels. Reduce degrees of freedom. When a player is stuck, offer 2 or 3 meaningful options instead of overwhelming them with a dozen. Think aloud hints. NPCs can voice heuristics when a patrol passes. Keep a wall at your back to teach patterns without breaking immersion. Peer scaffolding. Spotlight a veteran's turn as an exemplar, then pass to a novice with a similar but smaller challenge. So, in terms of design application, onboarding mechanics. Games like Dungeon World use moves that are easy to learn, but deepen in nuance as players use them. This scaffolds narrative play for beginners. Game Master guidance. Formalizing the Game Master not as adversary or storyteller, but as scaffolder, someone who stretches players just enough to keep them growing. Progressive playbooks. Legacy role-playing games, like Masks: A New Generation, evolve character playbooks as players hit milestones. Scaffolding character development and narrative growth. It can also be system-side scaffolds. Game design can also build scaffolding directly into the system. Things like onboarding arcs. Early tier moves or playbooks cover the basics. Later tiers unlock exceptions and combinations. Systems like Masks, Dungeon World, and Forged in the Dark model this sort of progression. scenario ladders, tutorials, then guided set pieces, then open problems. Clearly labeling stages helps players understand progression. Annotated turns in the rulebook or QR codes linking to short clips can model not just the how but the why of play. You can do stretch tags. Encounters or moves labeled with a stretch icon indicate they push a specific skill, like tactical positioning or social leverage. These give game masters tools to plan growth deliberately. Differentiation at a mixed skill table. Not every player has the same ZPD. Or multiple ZPDs. The bard may want a social stretch, while the ranger prefers a tactical stretch. Rotate scenes so each player is challenged in turn. Role-specific scaffolds. Give new players leveraged roles with repeatable mechanics. Intel gathering, lookout duties, while giving veterans more open-ended improv roles. This ensures everyone grows at their own pace. So, for example, from goblins to generals, Fight 1 teaches zones and cover. Fight 2 adds morale and objectives. Fight 3 introduces off-map artillery and moral costs. Each step increases complexity while fading game master coaching. Maybe there's a social arc. Start with a single NPC and a clear want. Next, introduce conflicting wants between non-player characters. Later, run a dual audience scene, public versus private. Finally, add reputational consequences tracked over multiple sessions. Now, some of the pitfalls of this are over-scaffolding can become railroading. The litmus test is, can the players still surprise you? If not, the scaffolds are too tight. Growth should be nudged, not forced, or players risk feeling managed rather than empowered. Some of the criticisms of this are viewing the game master as a scaffold within the ZPD reframes role-playing games as guided learning spaces. But not every table wants that. Some players resist a game master who seems to teach them rather than collaborate as equals. Too much scaffolding can easily collapse into railroading, undermining player agency. The theory also assumes linear growth, as if players should steadily increase competence. But many players prefer plateauing in comfortable roles or exploring laterally instead of improving. Critics argue that importing ZPD too directly risks turning role-playing games into pedagogy, when for many the goal is leisure and play, not structured education. So let's take a look at a synthesis of these theories. Taken together, these four theories stretch a vision of role-playing games as learning environments as much as entertainment systems. They don't just explain how we play, they suggest why certain designs succeed while others frustrate, and how we might better tune experiences for engagement, accessibility, and growth. Flow theory ensures that challenge is tuned to maintain engagement. Schema theory reminds us that players bring expectations that can be reinforced or subverted. Cognitive load theory warns against overwhelming players and encourages elegant design. Zone of proximal development reframes the game master as a guide scaffolding player growth over time. But these theories aren't isolated. They intersect, overlap, and sometimes pull against each other. Exploring these interactions opens up a richer design philosophy. Flow and schema. Familiarity meets stretch. Flow depends on a balance of skill and challenge, while schemas provide the foundation of what players expect a challenge to look like. In practice, schemas often function as the entry point for flow. Players can't engage in a state of optimal challenge if they don't know the rules of the game, as it were. A dungeon that affirms schema, there are monsters and treasure, sets the stage for flow by letting players apply their skills. Subverting schema, the treasure is a cursed treaty, then shifts the challenge into unfamiliar territory, nudging players toward growth. At the same time, schema subversion can break flow if it comes too suddenly or without foreshadowing, creating confusion rather than engagement. The lesson is that flow and schemas complement each other best in a rhythm of sorts. Anchor in familiarity, stretch through surprise. Flow and cognitive load. The channel and the bandwidth. Flow theory emphasizes the importance of staying in the channel between boredom and anxiety. Cognitive load theory explains why players fall out of that channel. Too much extraneous load, bookkeeping, reference flipping, creates frustration, while too little germane load leaves them understimulated. In other words, cognitive load is the architecture behind the flow channel. Designers who reduce extraneous load through elegant interfaces, reference aids, or modular mechanics help players stay focused on challenges that matter, the kind that generate flow. But here lies the tension. For some players, heavy crunch is part of the flow experience. Flow invites us to tune challenge, while CLT reminds us that challenge must be carefully distinguished from cognitive clutter. Schemas and cognitive load. Expectation as efficiency. Schemas reduce cognitive load by making the unfamiliar familiar. A tavern schema means players don't need to learn from scratch what taverns are for. This frees up bandwidth for germane load. Improvising how they'll bribe the bartender or interpret particular rumors that they hear. Subverting schemas, however, increases intrinsic load. A tavern where NPCs ignore gold or where the ale itself is sentient forces players to update their mental models, raising complexity. This can be thrilling or overwhelming depending on pacing. Here we see a synergy and a danger. Schemas can be used to lighten load for accessibility or complicate it to stretch players into new territory. The designer's job is to know when to use each. ZPD and flow, stretch without break. The zone of proximal development overlaps directly with flow. Both emphasize staying in a sweet spot, not too easy, not too hard. Flow focuses on the player's experience of challenge, while ZPD emphasizes the role of support in navigating that challenge. In a role-playing game, that means the game master isn't just tuning the difficulty curve, but actively scaffolding player growth, offering hints, nudging, spotlight time, and designing arcs that introduce complexity step by step. Flow asks, are the players engaged right now? ZPD asks, are they growing session to session? Together, they frame both the moment-to-moment and the long arc of play. ZPD and cognitive load, scaffolds as filters. ZPD scaffolding often works by reducing extraneous load until players are ready to handle it themselves. For example, a game master might pre-calculate modifiers for a novice, gradually teaching them how to do it as confidence grows. This aligns with CLT's idea of progressive disclosure. Start simple and then add complexity. Both theories advocate pacing exposure so players don't drown in options, but still develop mastery over time. The risk, of course, is over-scaffolding, which can reduce agency, or under-scaffolding, which can overwhelm. Both CLT and ZPD caution designers to calibrate carefully. Schemas and ZPD. Expectation as scaffold. Schemas themselves can act as scaffolds. A new player may not know the rules of combat, but they probably know the fantasy schema that heroes fight dragons. The game master can scaffold complexity by starting with schema, familiar situations, and layering in mechanics gradually. Conversely, schema subversion can be used as a stretch challenge in ZPD, forcing players to rethink expectations while providing just enough support to succeed. These aren't just abstract theories, they are complementary lenses that, taken together, help us understand role-playing games as both cognitive playgrounds and collaborative stories. Whether you're designing a new system or running tonight's session, thinking in terms of flow, schemas, load, and scaffolding can make your table more engaging, accessible, and memorable. Each theory brings something unique. But their intersections are where the real design magic happens. Familiarity that grounds complexity, that stretches, scaffolds that guide, and tension that keeps everyone in the game. So, what do you think? Have you seen flow, schemas, load, or the zone of proximal development in action at your table? Maybe you felt the thrill of flow in a perfectly balanced combat, or the cognitive overload of too many crunchy rules, or the fun of a game master gently nudging you into challenges you didn't know you could handle. I'd love to hear your stories, so please drop them in the comments section below. And if you're a designer, I'd love to know how you might use these theories to shape your own systems. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And as always, thanks for watching. See you next time.